hello and welcome. My name is Herberholz. I'm UFI's program manager and your moderator of the session on reopening exhibitions. We have received over 600 people who are interested in joining the session from over 60 countries. So wherever you are, from Argentina to Australia, from Bahrain to Brazil, from Canada to China, a very warm welcome. Based on the extensive work that has been already done by national associations and private organizations to reopening exhibitions again, UFI worked on a global framework to demonstrate that our industry can operate in a safe and controlled environment. And for that, we can open sooner rather than later. The UFI Global Framework for Opening Exhibitions and B2B Trade Events was published last week on the 5th of May. And since then, we have seen encouraging developments in two of the three largest trade show markets, China and Germany, with their respective governments making announcements concerning reopening exhibitions. We also followed with great interest the very first trade shows that open in China and South Korea since COVID-19, and more have been announced in the weeks and the months to come. So during the next hour, you have the opportunity to hear from and speak with industry experts who will share what associations and companies can do on a national level to influence decision makers to reopen our industry. Overall, this is your session, so I invite you to share your questions and comments in the chat function below. And in case you have any good practices you would like to share with the group, also please share that in the chat function. After the panelists give their opening statements, we have reserved a Q&A at the end. So how does that work? I will call out your name and ask you to share your question live. And my colleagues working in the background, Gosha, Jana, and Pascal, ensure that your voice is being heard. So let me introduce the panel to you. Today with us, we have Markus Spinger, Director of Global Markets and IT Division at AUMA, the Association of the German Trade Fair Industry. Also with us, Rachel Parker, Director of AEV, the Association of the Event Venues. And we have with us João de Nagy, CEO at the World Trade Center of São Paulo and Vice President at UBRAFE, the Brazilian Union of Trade Fair Promoters. Before I give the screen to the panel, I'd like to ask my colleague Nick Dugdale, our European Regional Manager, with whom I worked on this reopening project, to share with you more information about this global framework and what comes next. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Angela. If I'm allowed to share my screen, Gosha, that would be great. So I won't take too much of your time because I know you're eager to hear from our wonderful panelists. Okay, so hopefully you should be seeing my screen, if anyone can confirm that.
Yes.
Great. So just to let you know about the framework that Angela mentions, if you're not familiar already. So just to show you where it is on the UFI website. If you come here on the coronavirus page that hopefully you're familiar with, there's a lot of information about different activities and support measures from governments in general and especially for our industry, various advocacy resources. But the first link here is the framework itself. So this is really what we did, was to collect and collate various protocols, guides, recommendations that had been published from various organizations around the world, including from some of our speakers today. Most of them were broadly aligned. I guess 80 to 90% were very similar, but we collected them into ultimately 5 baskets, if you like, or 5 areas, which translated to about 31 points. Now, the purpose of this, well, there's 2 really. What we need to do is to obviously to argue and make the case that exhibitions, B2B exhibitions and other types of B2B events can be safely recommended to operate in this current environment. We have here some advocacy narrative, and fundamentally, the importance of exhibitions boils down to 2 things. Firstly, that exhibitions are a different type of mass gathering to other events. We are not speaking ill of our colleagues in the whether it be they beer festivals, music festivals, sporting festivals, but a B2B exhibition, we can control the journey of our visitors and exhibitors from before they arrive on site, all the time they're on site, and contacting them and ultimately tracing them afterwards if needs be. So they're a different type of mass event to others. And secondarily, they must be prioritized because exhibitions are key to getting our economies back on track. They are the fast tracks for economic recovery. So again, the advocacy messages are there, and then the framework is broken down into the 5 areas. So if you're not familiar with it, we can post the link in the chat. And lastly, I'd like to say, well, I'd like to thank the people that contributed to this, who are listed at the end. We reached out to a broad range of companies within our industry, from the organizer side, the venue side, associations and service providers. And the key here was speed. We turned this around very fast, just over a week. But actually, we've been building on this, and hopefully next week we'll be publishing another document that we are partnering with AIPC and ICA to include the full range of B2B events. And this will build on this framework and will ultimately give best practice examples of all of these different areas. So some of you may have seen earlier in the week the example of Brussels Expo and their UVC.
All right. I believe we lost Nick there. We'll be posting the link to the UFI chat. So if you wanna look at where it is. And now let's go to our panel. Very exciting. I will hand over to them now and let them share how their respective associations have dealt with the challenges of COVID-19 at a national level, and share what they have done to influence their governments and policymakers to reopen our industry again. First one on the panel is Marco, Director of Global Markets and IT Division at AUMA. And prior to the session, Marco shared with me that since playing tennis is again allowed in Germany, the only thing that is missing to complete his absolute happiness is the exhibition industry to reopen again. Marco, can you please share a little bit more about that and AUMA's involvement?
Yes, thank you. Are you hearing me? Am I online?
Yes, we hear you perfectly.
Yeah, but because I don't see myself on the screen now, as a monitor, it's not possible to see. Nick has screen share, so it says Nick is screen sharing with us. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna stop the sharing of the screen, and you should be able to see yourself.
Okay.
But we all can hear and see you very well.
Just to start,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So then, first of all, thank you for having me, and hello, welcome to this session. Greetings from Germany, yes. So it's such a pity that we can't meet in person. But I'm very thankful that UFI is connecting us, and so that we can exchange ideas, and that we can exchange our status and to inform each other. So thank you very much, UFI, for this. And so let's start with my views. Within AUMA, I'm in charge of trade shows in other countries than Germany, actually. In a regular year, our members organize more than 300 events in 40 countries, and we facilitate export by offering 250 or more German pavilions worldwide with the support of the German government. So I'm very much interested in reopening exhibitions worldwide, but we know the situation differs a lot, and it is very complicated. That is why today I set my focus on what is going on in Germany. Yes, due to falling numbers of new infections and still free capacities in the hospitals, we see some good signs for our service sector. The German government has accepted our arguments regarding the differentiation of event formats. But at the same time, the responsibility for lifting the ban is still with the 16 states in Germany called Länder. The German federal states will decide in future as of when exhibitions can be realized in guidelines for hygiene and personal distance are fulfilled. Government and federal states agreed on May 6, 2020 that similarity exhibitions will no longer be regarded as mass events. So that was most important, that the federal government and together with the federal states governments, they decided that exhibitions are no longer mass events. This is an important step in the direction of reopening the trade fair industry. The German exhibition organizers and AUMA are prepared to provide the responsible authorities with expertise and experience concerning the realization of exhibitions. For this purpose, AUMA's task has already prepared recommendations that meet the demands of hygiene and personal distance. So we launched a task force, and within this task force, we wrote down the recommendations that meet the demand of hygiene and personal distance. The step-by-step reopening of hotels and restaurants planned by the federal states until the end of May is an important precondition for exhibitions too. One of the most important states in Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, with 4 trade fair cities, Cologne, Düsseldorf, Essen, and Dortmund, announced that they will lift the ban by the end of May for B2B shows if the organizers are able to explain the concepts of distancing and hygiene. To ease this job, AUMA brought together experts in a task force. The discussion how we can meet the distancing rules on showgrounds is ongoing. Currently, our members take 5 to 10 square meters per person into consideration. Mask wearing is part of the concepts too. Now our members, and AUMA is supporting this, have to convince states where they are located, like Hesse, Bavaria, Baden-Württemberg, Hamburg, Berlin, and others, all under different political guidance. During the last 3 days, we got positive feedback from talks in Hesse, North Rhine-Westphalia, Saxony, and Rhineland-Palatinate. We publish all the different state regulations on our website on a regular basis. In Hesse, for example, the Ministry of Economics asked for a pilot scheme. For the local health authorities, the permit procedure are new and they have to learn about our business. The results could differ from local health authority to health authority, which would make it difficult for exhibitors to orientate themselves. We see the most difficult negotiations in Berlin and Baden-Württemberg. Yesterday, the German federal government announced that the border controls end on June 15th. To some neighboring countries like Luxembourg, Austria, Switzerland, and France, the controls will be lifted already next week. Even the other Schengen countries have plans to open borders without quarantine measures. But all political decisions are under condition that the numbers of infected are not running out of control, and the other countries are able to trace infected people. Therefore, freedom of traveling is still a crucial issue, and AUMA is addressing this to the German government constantly. Our task is now to convince exhibiting companies that the participation is safe for the stand personnel and beneficial for the company. Especially the big corporates have hard travel restrictions to keep the offices and product plants running without infected personnel. After all, I'm optimistic to see trade shows are able to run again in September. like shows in China, the regional catchment areas and the numbers of visitors will be limited in the first phase, I think. So the uncertainties are not all gone, but optimism is increasing. So I think that's my statement, and I'm happy to answer some questions after this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marco. Very insightful. If you have any questions, please use our chat function, and we'll come back to your input when our next two panelists have spoken. So please continue sharing there or raise your hand. Next on our panel is Rachel, Director of AEV, the Association of Event Venues. Rachel has always been passionate about the industry and is in our industry since more than 18 years now. Outside of her work, she shared with me that her 2 daughters and 2 dogs keep her very busy, as well as her husband in the same industry. Rachel, can you share with us how we can win the confidence to restart exhibitions again?
Sure, thank you, Angela, and thank you for asking me along today. So the AEV represents many of the large international multi-purpose venues through to more specialist regional providers. 2/3 of our membership are from within the UK. We sit alongside the AEO and ESSA, who are 2 other organisations that are UFI members. And in terms of our interaction with government, we've always ensured that everything is done together so that 3 associations are therefore capturing the whole events and exhibitions industry. I think many of the people on the panel today and in the audience will know my colleague Chris Skeeth from the AEO, who also sits with UFI as well, and Andrew Harrison. So I'm actually talking on behalf of all 3 of us here. I'm going to focus pretty much on the government side of life and what we've been doing and the lobbying messaging that we've done over the last couple of months since the pandemic started. We've engaged with government for years and years and had representation at any opportunity that came our way, so that when the crisis actually did happen, we were already very involved in a number of different groups which gave us direct access into government. I should point out that unlike Marco and many other countries in the USA and around the world, that lobbying in the UK is done centrally, whilst I appreciate that obviously there are ministers there that represent Scotland, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, but it is generally done centrally. So it is slightly easier for us than many of our counterparts. So the 4 areas and meetings that generally happen and that we're involved in, as one that's actually happening this afternoon, is the Events Industry Board, which who act as a sounding board and are a point of dialogue between the ministers and the industry. Michael Hurst, who is OBE, is the chair of this, and the Minister of Tourism is normally in attendance at this meeting. The second meeting is the Event Industry Senior Leaders Meeting, which is a quarterly meeting with the Minister of Tourism, and a number of our AEV and AEO members attend that to represent the industry. Thirdly is the BVEP, which is an umbrella organisation which represents leading trade and professional organisations in the business, visits and event sector. And finally, of course, the DCMS, which is the Department of Culture, Media and Support. And we have having daily contact with them at the moment via sort of the tour industry emergency response meetings, which happen on a daily basis. So all of these groups meet frequently, and since the pandemic began, our messaging at the start was all about seeking inclusion in the leisure, tourism and hospitality, with a main focus to basically getting an industry support package that will continue past the summer. And it's been announced this week that in particular the furlough scheme for the UK is being extended through to October, which is fantastic news for this industry. The other messages is also that trying to get the government to understand that events do mean business for the markets and supply chains that they serve, and as well as uniting all our communities and audiences. And at the time, we were also seeking guidance and clarity on when mass gatherings will be allowed to run again. Picking out really on what Nick was saying as well, obviously the messaging has changed over the last few weeks as we've all been scurrying around trying to get our plans together. And in fact, the citing of the recognition that our industry creates organised as opposed to mass gatherings, and that we really must be treated separately to the other industries. Again, as Nick has mentioned before, you know, we do create controlled environments for known audiences. We can track and we can trace. So that's all things that you're probably all very aware of. The other sort of 4 or 5 key messages now that we are focusing on with government is getting them again to thinking that the events and exhibitions will play part in reigniting the UK economy post the outbreak, and recognition that we stimulate economic impact across the hotels, the airlines, the restaurants and other business tourism activities all over the UK. Again, like many other countries, many of our venues have played host to Nightingale hospitals and have been turned into hospitals for the NHS to increase the capacity for them, which is fantastic. And obviously they've been brilliant that we've been able to help fight the cause. But we need to know that the venues can revert to being venues again as quickly as possible. So timeframes and clarity are key on this, as without the venues, and a lot of the events are not going to be able to happen. We also need to ensure that we're included in all the government's plans to stimulate the key vertical markets. So again, slightly picking up on what I was saying before, the events and exhibitions do provide a cost-effective and direct trading platform which fuel the industries and their supply chains. Post this crisis, there is going to be a pent-up demand. Markets are going to need to want and to trade, and events and exhibitions are the perfect and the instant platform business for all of this to be conducted. And we still seek explicit reference to being part of the leisure, hospitality and tourism. So we want it to say leisure, hospitality, tourism and events and exhibitions. We want it to be specific because we just want to avoid any ambiguity on inclusion in all current and all future packages and measures that will come out. So these are the key messages that at the moment that we are hammering out, and we're continuing to deliver it at any way that we can. So at all the meetings that I mentioned before that are taking place, those are the key messages. At any other opportunity, we've had members that might have direct links in with other ministers. We make sure that they are on message with these messages so that we can try and get the message through to the whole of government, not just via DCMS and the Minister of Tourism. So how are we actually, what are we actually doing about it as well? We're inputting into the DCMS Event Recovery Task Force. And by doing this, the AEV specifically, we've launched an Events Reopen group. And we're meeting weekly, and we're focusing on basically discussing and agreeing all the best practice and guidelines for venues to adopt for events. Thank you to UFI, because we certainly used the UFI framework, and that's basically been the starter for us to start delving in deeper into more of the detail, which is work that's ongoing at the moment. In addition, we've created another across association group. So we've done an AEV, AEO and ESSA events recovery group, which all of course has representatives from all associations, and ultimately we're looking to deliver a template for all of our members to be able to use, and this will basically be create an overall framework which we will then feed into DCMS to give the government basically the confidence that we know best how to run events. We do believe that that's the way to do it, and I think ultimately government are looking to us to say, how you know your industry best, you tell us how is the best way to go about it. And all other areas of the association at the moment is that we run a number of working groups, be it from catering to security to health and safety, and they are all running via Zoom. In fact, they're all thriving at the moment. We've pitched the groups as learning and information groups, so any staff that have been furloughed, they're still able to actually come along and engage. Most of the groups are now meeting either every 2 weeks or monthly, which is they're normally on a sort of 3 to 4 month basis. So member engagement has actually never been as high as it is at the moment. I think everybody is wanting to play their part and have their chance to actually discuss the nitty-gritties, be it about how you're going to queue people, how many times the toilet's going to have to be cleaned, what are you going to clean it with, so all of that detail, which clearly we're not going to discuss today, but those discussions are all taking place during those working groups. From a media and marketing point of view, we're we're getting on top of our Stronger Together campaign, because we believe that that will be a key message to go throughout the industry. We're also at the very, very beginnings of another project, working together again with the AEO and ASA, looking at a project confidence scheme campaign, which will be really very much looking at building people's confidence about coming back into into events and wanting to come, and what are we going to do about it? What are they going to be looking to see? So again, that's at very, very early stages, so I can't really tell you much about that at all at the moment. And I think that's probably my time up actually now. So I think that's all we've got to say, but thank you for the opportunity, and see if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Any questions, please share with us in the chat. We're going to come to it in just a couple of minutes. I think, Rachel, you mentioned that member engagement is as high as ever. This clearly shows the need of us to communicate with one another, and also to share best practices, to share what everybody is doing, and we don't all have to start from scratch. So that's very, very important. Thank you very much for that. João, I will come next to you. You're Vice President of UBRAFE, the Brazilian Union of Trade Fair Promoters. Due to the successful lobbying work in Brazil, I understand that our industry is third in line when it comes to reopening again. Can you please share more about UBRAFE's involvement and the development in Brazil, please?
Okay, I'm open. With pleasure. Hello, everybody. Well, I actually believe that Brazil will surprise everybody, because we have this image of this organization. Our authorities don't understand each other, they keep on conflicting, and that's what seems to occupy the space in the international news. But in reality, our economy is very dynamic. We had come from a change in regime, and in the last year, actually, the economy was booming. It was really starting to go in the right direction, and here changes are very fast, like in any developing country. Unfortunately, we were hit by this pandemic that is creating an unknown world for everybody. And like most of the world population, we are scared. We are concerned. We are truly scared of how do we move, and we are listening to everybody, trying to find ways. But I do think that we are finding a very much clear communication amongst ourselves as a population and with the authorities. Just to give you some background, Brazil, like Germany, is divided into states. They have the land, we have states, 27 states. There's a presidential regime, but São Paulo, where I am, has the economic impact of nearly 40% of all economic aspects of Brazil. And in our industry, nearly 80% of the exhibitions are held in São Paulo. So you can imagine that this is where things are happening today. And we have a governor who comes from the private sector. He has been a governor for a year. Before he was mayor for a year as well. And he was the president of the tourism board way back. So he's a man that understands the need and the importance for a city like São Paulo, which is not like Rio de Janeiro, which is a tourism destination. We are a working city. So the tourism we have here is business tourism, it's B2B. And trade fairs are a very important part of that. Without trade fairs, the occupancy of the hotels and the flights into São Paulo will fall between 20 and 30%. It's a huge impact. Unlike other countries, he has left hotels open. So hotels are considered essential services for people that have to stay away from their families, for medical staff that needs to stay away. Many hotels have closed because the demand has dropped considerably. We own a hotel with a Sheraton in São Paulo, and it's open. Demand is very low. Also, flights have not been cancelled. They are there, but there is no demand. So naturally, the airlines have reduced their flights, and the few flights that are rather full, which is a bit of a problem. In general, I think that we are going to come out of this changed, poorer, everybody, I think, but with new ways of doing business. And for us here in Brazil, as we are behind in the time that the epidemic reached us, in the sickness hit us, we learn a lot from Germany, from Asia, from England, very interesting presentations. But one thing is for sure, the importance of trade associations has never been higher, because the authorities don't want to talk to the individual operators because each one has his own concerns. They like to talk to associations, and our associations are getting stronger here. There was work done by some individuals with the support of the association, which before the authorities started working on protocols, we already had a protocol for the mice industry ready. I've shared it with Nick, and he can share it with everybody who has concern, and goes into detail into everything. And although different events have different needs, UBRAFE, which is the entity of the trade organizers, has done its own adaptations, and we've delivered that to the authorities. Here, as the governor has a lot of move, and it's his call when he opens the economy and what sectors of the economy opens or not, he has created a weekly working group. We are nearly 100 people in that, all CEOs of major corporations or presidents of entities. I have a seat on that meeting, and yesterday, for example, I had some 15 minutes to make a presentation on our industry, and it's day by day. So it's very much hands-on. So the communication is direct, and there has been indication that they will prioritize B2B events. In São Paulo, we just about have B2B events. There are weddings, birthdays, and things like that, but we have a lot of B2B events. And as has been mentioned before, it is an area that people are coming for specific needs. It's one-on-one conversations. Of course, there will be less people. In the beginning, I do think that we are going to see more regional visitation. There's a problem. The people don't want to get ill abroad. So the time for people to travel abroad is going to take some time. But we have maybe an advantage that we are a very large domestic economy. So there is need. Yesterday, for example, I had a conversation with a friend who owns the boat show here. And we are, for the ones who are not aware, we are now in winter. December, January is our summer season. And he was telling me, see, people are not going to take the plane to go to Miami to visit abroad. They're going to stay in Brazil. So they want to improve their boats, buy boats, do this. So people will visit the boat show. The problem is, can you do a boat show? We are still restricted to mass gatherings. The governor will announce on the 31st of May what he's going to do. And his show, unfortunately, is September. The window of operation is limited. So this, of course, is also impacting the size of the events when they open, because the uncertainty of the dates are a problem everywhere, and no less here. We have a bit of a disadvantage in relation to the more developed countries, is that money is expensive. The cost of money in Brazil is nearly 1% a month. So you can see when you are an operator and you are in difficult conditions, etc., this has an impact. So we are trying to find ways of financing the operators so they are alive when the economy reopens, because the economic impact on each company for sure is going to be big. We, in general, are optimistic. The events industry, and specifically the trade fairs, are fundamental for our economy, be it on the domestic side and more especially on the international. The hybrid events, this type of thing that we're doing now, and we are getting used to it, will not substitute the face-to-face contact, because we have to buy things from each other, especially across borders. We need to build confidence, and the confidence is built by personal relationships. So we believe that we have the year of our authorities. The problem is economic right now, and of course, as the world has become a global marketplace, it doesn't also depend just on our state, on our country. It depends on our neighbors and international travel allowance, so that we can go and get back to normal business, which will take some time. But we do believe that we will have some trade fairs still this year. Naturally, the venues are full because people that were going to have the venue in the first semester moved the dates to the second, so there's no dates available, but most of those will still cancel because the uncertainty of the opening date, especially in São Paulo, is a problem. I don't know if this has given you a general idea of where we are, but I'm able to be joined with you for questions and answers afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, João. And yes, this gives us a very good insight of what is happening in your part of the world in Brazil. Thank you very much for sharing. We have received a lot of questions, so I'm going to dive right into it and would like to call out the first one who is offering to ask a question. Vicky Dalkrami has a question for Rachel.
Yep. Hi. That was for Rachel because I sent two questions actually. One for Marco and one for Rachel. Hi from Thessaloniki, Greece. Thank you very much for the very interesting information that you all gave to us. Briefly, just to ask Rachel, if in all the discussions that you are having with all stakeholders, if there are any conflicts between organizers and exhibition centers, because when it comes to money, there might be some case into interests, I mean. The question to Marco is whether those recommendations of AUMA regarding personal hygiene and all this stuff, if it is available or could become available to UFI members.
Thank you, Vicky. Rachel, maybe we can ask with you to answer the first question.
So, hi, Vicky. In terms of any concern between any additional costs and conflict, I mean, we're still at the stage where we're trying to work everything out and we're approaching everything via a risk assessed process. In terms of where the costs are coming in, to be fair, we haven't really got down to the detail of who is going to pay for what, and I think there's a general belief that it needs to be a shared cost, and to in terms of conflict of interest, people need to look at the bigger picture. In terms of conflict as far as venues and organisers, I'll be really honest with you, as an association, it's a commercial area, therefore it's not an area that we would get involved in anyway. So we do sort of encourage our organisers and our venues to discuss and build on the relationships and build up a relationship and a deal going forward. So I'm sorry, it's probably not answering the question as to quite how you want me to answer it, but that's the way it is with us at the moment.
Thank you. The question was mostly because we are also, let's say, trying to organize this kind of discussions as Helexpo from the Greek side. But since we are both an exhibition center and an organizer, we have realized that the others who are either one or the other are trying to, let's say, clarify this point. This is why I made the question. For us, it's the same, one the same.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. And the second question, I believe, was Marco, in your direction.
Yes. Hi.
Well, the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you mentioned earlier about some recommendations.
Hello to Greece.
Yes, hi there.
Hi.
From a very hot Greece, actually.
Okay. Yes, the white paper, you can call it standards or recommendations. They are online on our website, and I think we sent it already to UFI, and could be there too. But I'm sorry to tell you, it's only in German, and it's not it's not translated yet. But you will find it on the website of UFI or AUMA.
Okay, no problem. Thanks a lot. I do speak German, so I just wanted to have an idea. So it's going to be fun. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Let's move on to our next question from Michael Hunter.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm work for a company. We are a member of IELA, and we had a meeting yesterday where we were discussing the role that a freight forwarder and an on-site lifting contractor is going to have in developing the new procedures as we try to sort out the problems with the COVID-19 virus. One of the questions I was thinking, we understand that we're going to have to possibly consider additional build-up periods and breakdown periods, and with all the additional staffing levels, I was just wondering what the venues were planning on doing to maybe subsidise, not necessarily the freight forwarders, but possibly the guest organisers at venues.
Thank you very much,
Makes
Michael.
sense.
So, yeah, the question is, what are the venues are planning to do or planning to implement as part of those framework discussion on how to allow larger build-up times before and after the show, or if they're thinking about any other measures. Who would like to take that? Rachel, yes, please.
I'll take this as my last because you know I've got to slip away. I just on the basis of what we've been talking about, I know that I think I mentioned before, the belief is that we're in this together, and everybody wants to get events back up and running. So if it means it's going to take a longer time, then of course venues are going to try and find that extra time. When it comes down to the cost, again, I can't actually talk about the cost specifically, but I believe there's a general collaborative approach from all ends, be it suppliers, venues and organisers, and so we've got to find a way to do it. So I hope that it doesn't come down to who's going to pay for it, it's more about how we're going to do it.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you very much. I know you need to slip away. Marco, João, do you want to comment on that question?
I'm muted. Yeah, well, this is a problem. There will be more cost of operation for us all. That's for sure. The economics of our industry will change, and we'll have to find ways of doing things cheaper. There is a feeling in Brazil, you know, we had very elaborated stands during the trade fairs, and we have a feeling that we'll move more towards the American setup with smaller booths, more contact between people, but cheaper stands, which will possibly compensate for part of this, because it will also reduce the time to set up and to undo the trade fair. So we'll have to find a new way of building these costs that are realistic but there is also the tendency to already reduce some of the other costs and become more objective. I think we'll have less curious people visit trade fairs. I think people come more for the business itself. So there might be greater efficiency that will also help to cover these costs.
Thank you very much, João. Marco.
Yeah, I can only echo my colleagues and can stress the collaborative approach of our members when it comes to the negotiations with guest organizers. But we are not involved in so specific issues like specific costs.
Thank you very much.
If I can just jump in and add, though, it's, you know, like everything, it's impossible to have a one-size-fits-all policy. You know, there are certain venues around the world, I'm thinking of, you know, some in Hong Kong that are running at full capacity at back-to-back with very short build-up and breakdown times, you know, no time turnaround between shows. So that wouldn't be possible to increase times. Therefore, yes, you'd have to look at options such as, you know, prefabricated stands or whatever that might be. So, you know, compared in your individual market, you'll need to look at what works for you.
Thank you. Ian Sterling, over to you. You had a question.
Thanks, Angela. Question to Marco, actually. Is AUMA working on a set of new or temporary industry standards, basically a certification that will show that venues and organisers are working towards a required industry hygiene standard? Is that something that you're working on at the moment, so that said organisers and venues will have something to meet before an event takes place? Does that make sense?
It did. Marco, did you hear the question?
Was a little bit loud, so I don't know if I got it right. So I got it like this, that the concepts of the organizers, they will be checked and approved by local authorities. Yeah, and they are in the first discussions now. It's a very early stage now. To talk about this, but we gave some general recommendations compiled by our members, and so they will use this in the discussion with the local authorities or the state authorities to get individual permissions, of the authorities to run their show. So this will be part of of the individual negotiations with the authorities, I think.
Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you, Ian, for asking the question. Next, we move to Vijay Sharma, one of our NGL grant winners.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you, Angela. Hello, everyone from Singapore. My question is to all the three panelists. I think they covered pretty much the permission part, which is what they're doing in terms of getting permissions to organize trade shows. My question is more towards confidence, because for us as trade fair organizers, we are getting a lot of questions, and we are a for-profit business, and it doesn't make to run a loss-making show. So I just wanted to quickly ask, do you have any incentives being planned to get event or show organizers to organize an event for this year?
João, maybe over to you. Is that something that you would like to answer?
You asked me? All right. Listen, I think it's a bit early for that, because until the moment that our governor announces when we can do the shows, that point is still, we are dealing with a moving target. I don't know how it is in your countries. You know, every day we are waking up in the morning, how many died yesterday? How are the intensive care units? You know, so this is a thermometer that unfortunately, like happened in the other countries, has not followed really a straight line, you know, and we get some optimistic news and then we get some negative news. So we are running after making sure that we have enough intensive care units for those people that need it. That's the priority right now. But one thing I can tell you, in Brazil, we do not have a lockdown. In São Paulo, we don't have a lockdown. We have a situation that they try to work towards isolation. And it's around 50%. 50% of the people they are not isolated, either because they are essential services or because they don't want to be isolated. So I do believe that trade shows will be smaller, but there will be some people that will want to come and they want to go, and others that don't want to go. So this is not really, what you can incentivize is by making sure that everybody knows there's some very strict protocols and that it's clear and they make sense. They don't make people feel very insecure to come. That's the incentive. The hotels will not be full, so they'll give special prices for people to come. And hotels are easier to control because everybody's in his own room and he can order room service. The protocols are already in place in major international chains. There's a challenge with the airlines. How are they going to be able to carry people far apart from each other without charging them an arm and a leg? But in general, I think the business motivation is going to be the biggest motivation. People need to get back to doing business they want to do, and they need to survive, because if they die of hunger because they don't have any money, it's also an illness. So I think there is a motivator of financial survival, which will help us as well.
Sorry to, just a quick one. I understand what you said, but what I meant was even for trade fair organizers, there has to be an incentive to organize an event with all the precautions being taken. We have to actually make sure there is enough space for social distancing. So that would actually come in from our pockets. So how do you like, as venue organizers, what do you plan to do to make sure an event goes through?
Well, as an event organizer, then not looking at the state, we will have to flexibilize the price of the square meter in the first moment, because unfortunately, although it looks like the second semester is full, I have no doubt that 60% of that is going to cancel, also because participants don't want to come, etc. So we will have to work in partnership like we've always done with the organizers and flexibilize on price, because in the first moment, until we find the correct balance of the economic model, we'll have to work hand in hand, case by case. Each case is a case. But this is business as usual. This is nothing new for us. As business people, this is business as usual.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Thank you very much, João, for answering. The next question comes from Karina Jans.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My question is, apart from asking the industry to provide best suggestions and best practice models, have there been any specific requirements from the governments that we will as an industry need to adhere to? For example, tracing or testing on site or measures like that?
Marco, do you want to take this first?
Yes. Yesterday I got some regulations from Shanghai, and I think this is quite comprehensive and interesting approach to get regulations to set up regulations for the trade show organizers and venues. And I think UFI will have this too, yeah. And maybe you can publish this too, the 5 points, the rules to reopen trade shows in Shanghai. Very interesting paper, and I think the organizers in Shanghai and SNIEC, the trade show venue, which is partly owned by German trade show organizers, they got this paper already, and they are working on this and try to find ways to deal with this paper.
Thank you, Marco. João, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Our government, or state government, has announced that tomorrow they will deliver the protocols for all industry sectors. They've collected all the information. We had sent it before, but everybody else had to fill in forms and so on. They've been with a very active working group working on this, and they've announced that they will share these protocols tomorrow. I will be glad to send, if there's a specific situation for the MICE industry, with anybody, and certainly to UFI.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I would like to call Barbara Weizsäcker up next to share a little bit as Secretary General of AIA. She's been working with the European Commission and sharing what is going on that front. Barbara, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Angela. I would just like to update everyone a little bit what's happening on the unit in perfectly with what has been said. There is some brand new news that yesterday Asian has published a package on tourism, and which contains guidance for some items. It is mainly focused on the upcoming summer season that the European Commission, together with the member states, is trying to save, and therefore taking up all the exhibition and business travel items. However, it is a start opening up borders and making hospitality sector work again, which is also the basis for us being operational again. So just very briefly, I can post the link to all the documents into the chat afterwards, but there is a guidance for border opening. The European Commission can only try to coordinate. The member states across the whole EU can do what they want, and now it's even going down on the regional level. So there is this threat of total fragmentation on borders and on health items, protocols required, etc. So they really try to coordinate everything. So it's about the borders opening, about the restoring of transport services, which is also another element which is really vital for us. Health and safety protocols, and even find recommendations. It's perhaps a good example also for other regions in the world. Then there was this big topic of vouchers for passenger rights and package travel. It doesn't concern us very much. However, for people who travel and might have to cancel, etc., it's very important whether they get their money back or can only get a voucher. And one very important aspect is the mobile tracing apps that are being developed right now, which could be also a very good basis for us reopening if everyone had that app. They want to ensure the interoperability of all the different apps within the EU, meaning that at least intra-EU travel could be easier, and even people coming from outside, they can take whatever app is appropriate, and it could be used across the whole EU. So there is light. Everyone is really trying to work for the summer season, and business travel will probably only resume after that. this is clear. However, if people can start traveling, it is a good sign, and we should use this window to lobby more. And also, I mean, I try to encourage everyone to take also on this European example and use the documents for your local lobbying across the globe. We really need to continue to share arguments and encourage each other to fight for being open in a health and safety environment, of course, and hopefully avoiding any other big wave of reinfections. If there are any other questions, of course, I can answer too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for sharing. Thank you. I'd like to call up Kai next, Kai Hattendorf from UFI, who want to add to the question of regulations, who is coming up with regulations. Kai, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. And hello and good day to everybody. Both the documentation that was published in Shanghai, as well as what is currently being discussed in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia and Germany, are based on proposals that were passed from our industry to the politicians. So the key really is that we as an industry do not sit and wait until the authorities get to us and ask us, when would you like to reopen? But it is up to us to be proactive. This is the whole reasoning behind the framework. This is the whole reasoning behind the advocacy message. And this is the whole reasoning behind these 30 measures that the framework includes. The version very similar to this framework opened the industry in Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. A document very similar to this framework is used by the Köln-Messe and Messe Düsseldorf together with their own proposals when they talk to the regional administration and authorities in this German state. So it's in our hand to make use of the materials we bring together and bring them to the politicians. Now, Barbara is doing an amazing job on that in Brussels on behalf of the European industry. Marco is doing a great job the AUMA team. João, you're doing a great job in Brazil. This is where it is in our hands as the industries, trade associations, to be the relay between the interests of our industries, because we have the access to the politicians and the policymakers. And so, in essence, we will open all the sooner and have a chance to fill the meeting places and the marketplaces again for the world and open the doors in a safe and healthy environment. If we work together and continue to make this point. This is what this year's Global Exhibition Day will all be about. This is what this campaign, on this side, sorry, this show will open again. It's all about. It's about keeping the drumbeat, keeping the awareness going, continuing on the media work, on the advocacy work, on the awareness work, and take what we know has been working in one part of the world to another part of the world as a good practice example. Nick was referencing earlier that we hope to have a huge document providing guidance on that on a very concrete level of measures out next week. But we all need to be together on this. We cannot sit and wait and look around and say, well, let's wait for the politicians to come to us. It is up to us to go to the politicians.
Thank you very much, Kai. Wonderful closing remarks. Thank you so much. João and Marco, before we close the session, is there anything that we would like to share in addition?
Well, if I can just say, let's be optimistic, because bad news are reaching us every day. We need to think out of the box, reinvent ourselves. For sure, we're coming back. The question is how fast, so that we are economically alive. Have a great day, everybody. Look forward to continue exchanging. Thank you very much, UFI, for this platform and for inviting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Positive words. Thank you. Marco, last words are for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, last words. I think what I learned is that the German government, it has never been questioned by the government that exhibitions are a useful platform for innovation and cooperation, and that they will stimulate and recover the German economy in the short and the medium run. It was always weighing up of the interest of health and interest of economy, and the interest of health had more weight. Now politicians are trying to balance these interests more because they think we are in a new phase of the pandemic, and that makes me optimistic too. And let's work on this. And I can only stress what Kai said. We have to go to the politicians and not wait and see.
Thank you very much, Marco, as well. If there is any more questions that come to your mind after the session, or any questions that we couldn't answer within the time frame that we had given, please send us an email and give us your feedback as well, how you like the session. Overall, UFI is continuing to organize UFI Connect sessions, so keep an eye on that. I'm going to introduce what's up in just a moment, but before that, I really want to give a very, very big thank you to Marco, Rachel, and João for joining us today. All your days are very, very busy, and we really much appreciate your taking the time to share your insights with us. And also would like to thank everyone who was joining us for this session and to take the time to be present and ask questions. Last but not least, a very big thank you to our UFI Diamond sponsors, TCEP, Qatar National Tourism Council, Shenzhen World, and Freeman, which are very, very important for us to continue doing what we're doing. And overall, look forward for the next UFI Connect session next Tuesday. It's going to be a creative one on the 19th of May on Global Exhibitions Day. With that, thank you very much. Stay safe and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.